We never lost eye contact. His eyes were bugging out. His face was just expressionless. He waved the knife from his lower right side upwards across his body towards my left shoulder.
And when he did that, what did you do, officer?
I shot him.
That's Jason Van Dyke testifying in his own defense. A jury has reached a verdict. We will know that verdict within 5 minutes. Van Dyke facing a first-degree murder charge as he shot 17-year-old Laquan McDonald 16 times. We have our guest with us. Bob Bianchi joins us now. He's a former prosecutor. The key there, he's trying to say, and he did testify, especially when he was telling his story to his lawyers, that he felt threatened, that the threat never subsided. Laquan McDonald never dropped the knife. Do you think the jury's believing that, Bob?
I think they have a very hard time based on the video. I think the defendant did himself a huge disservice by saying that he thought the officer was backpedaling, which the video clearly shows he wasn't, and that Laquan was coming towards him. There's a line going right down the center of the road, Mike, and Laquan is actually veering off away from the officer. And you know what? Maybe that first round of shots, I know that my friend Jimmy's on here, Gagliano, but, you know, you could close a distance in a very short period of time with a knife, and they teach you that. I've gone through the firearms training, but he could never get past why he shot the second round of shots when he was on the ground. He made a very unlikable witness. He was combative, odd, strange. I think he really hurt himself. But, you know, cop cases and proving these cases are difficult for prosecutors, but I think they got this one last point. This jury's come back pretty quick, so that's not favorable to the defense.
All right, all eyes on Chicago. We're about 3 minutes away, so we're going to take a commercial break. You just heard it there that Jason Van Dyke is guilty of second-degree murder. Let's bring in Ariva Martin. Ariva, help us out here. Help the viewer understand what second-degree murder means versus first-degree here.
So in this statutory scheme in Chicago, all of the elements of first-degree murder, meaning that he acted with intention when he shot Laquan McDonald, those elements had to be established both for first-degree murder and second-degree murder. And as we heard the judge say, the only difference in this state statutory scheme is that
Go ahead, Ariva. I'm sorry.
Is that second-degree murder includes some mitigating factor. Now, it's not clear to me, not having sat through the entire trial, what this mitigating factor is. It's a little puzzling to me that he is found guilty of second-degree murder as well as aggravated assault or aggravated battery on all 16 counts. And that was, we know, as it relates to each time that he fired his gun. Each of those 16 times that he shot Laquan McDonald, this jury is holding him responsible for each of those 16 shots that he fired. It'd be interesting to know what is the mitigating factor that the jurors took into consideration.
Bob, weigh in on that. What could be that mitigating factor here that brings it to second-degree murder?
Well, I think that they're going to say that he had a reasonable perception, Mike. I don't know exactly what they found, but of some fear based upon the previous activity of Laquan and then having the knife and not listening to officer commands. But you can't underestimate, Mike, also, that sometimes jurors sit there and they say, listen, we're going to compromise a little bit here. He shouldn't have shot him. We're going to get him guilty on the 16 ag assault counts with the firearm. We're doing second-degree murder here because you may have had one or two jurors that sat there and said, you know, that defense lawyer was right. If he had just dropped the knife, none of this would have happened. So it's really hard to nitpick.
Again, breaking news, a verdict in Jason Van Dyke, that police officer, guilty of second-degree murder. He was facing first-degree murder, 2 counts there, 16 counts aggravated battery, and 1 count of official misconduct. Now, you may remember this crime happened back in 2014. A year later, that video was released that you saw. I do want to go back to the panel. Ariva, you were speaking about what you believe the mitigating factor may be here. How do you think they came up with second-degree murder here?
Yeah, the prosecutor on the panel as well, I think, alluded to this fact. We know that the defense team, their whole strategy was to say that Laquan McDonald had an opportunity to end this entire incident. A command was shouted to him to drop the knife. He didn't drop the knife. We know that Van Dyke testified that he continued to shoot after the first bullet was fired because Laquan never dropped the knife. So jurors may have taken into consideration that Laquan didn't drop the knife. We also heard Jason Van Dyke testify that he felt that his life was in danger, that Laquan was charging towards him, although that wasn't proven by the videotape. But jurors may have taken that into consideration when reaching the second-degree, guilty verdict versus the first degree, which is a possibility for them as well.
Bob Bianchi's with us as well. Bob, do you think it was a mistake that Jason Van Dyke took the stand and, in his own words, said, "I was backpedaling"?
Absolutely. Jason Van Dyke is a defense lawyer's nightmare on the witness stand. You know, when I was a baby prosecutor, my people that taught me said something very apt. The juries love to convict out of the mouth of the defendant themselves. He was unappealing as a witness. He was odd in his testimony. His testimony contradicted the video. He was relatively combative. And on a use of force case like this, officers are better not to take the stand and rely on the law and the expert testimony. But he just really, in my opinion, cinched it against himself after he testified.